Well, it is such an honor and privilege to be here with a dear friend, Dr. Monisha Bhanote, who is, by the way, 5 times board certified. And I want to know more about that. I didn't even know that was a possibility. I thought triple board certified sounded really amazing. We want to talk more about your certifications and what you focus on. And she's been featured on NBC, the Huffington Post, Women's World. She is a force to be reckoned with. And she focuses on many things, but some that are near and dear to my heart. Cell care, so focusing on cellular health and just getting out of the burnout, self-care, and why it's so important in the nervous system as well. And I know you have a practice. We'll get all this in the show notes, but if you can share a little bit more about your background, that would be amazing.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much, Jen, for having me on the Wellness Sherpa podcast. I'm looking forward to talking to your community and sharing what I've learned over these decades. So imagine this, like just picture this. I'm sitting at a microscope for the thousandth time, okay? Diagnosing disease after disease, inflammatory cells, cellular dysfunction, cancer cells, all of this, slide after slide, like literally thousands and thousands and millions of slides, right? And after diagnosing these millions of diseases and tissues under the microscope, I began to see a pattern. And that pattern really kind of changed my trajectory to why did I not stop at 3 board certifications to why do I have 5 board certifications? And what I saw was that every single disease cell was telling the same story. It was a story of inflammation. It was a story of, from a scientific term, oxidative stress. It was a story of cellular communication mishaps. And so, just to give you a little bit of background, I have those 5 board certifications: anatomic pathology, clinical pathology, cytopathology, integrative medicine, and culinary medicine. Where do we start?
Yeah. But they're all connected.
They are all absolutely connected.
Yeah.
In a way,
Okay.
I've made them
Yeah.
connect.
Yeah. So share, okay, so you're looking under the microscope, you're seeing these patterns.
Yeah.
So let me ask a question. How are these patterns emerging? And have they changed at all? So I'm assuming that was at the beginning of your career when you were first in the medical world. You're looking at these slides. What was the story telling you, and what has changed in the last 20, 30 years?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I started out as a physician who is like your general like internist that most people know, you get sick, they treat, this many chronic diseases, you get your medications. And I was doing that my first year out of med school. And I was like, oh, wait a minute, why isn't anybody getting better? This is not cool. Like everybody's still got the same problems. I'm still prescribing the same medications. I'm seeing them in the clinic. I'm seeing them in the emergency room. And gosh, this like I'm not fixing anything. I'm not helping anybody, even though I'm doing what was the right thing. So I then proceeded to go into pathology. And for those of you guys who might not know, pathology is really the diagnosis of disease. It's pathologists or doctors. So we are looking at the tissues in the body. So whether you've had a colonoscopy and you had a biopsy removed from there, or you had a mammogram and they found something and you had a breast core needle biopsy from there, or your blood that's taken out of you goes to a pathologist, or say you have a thyroid nodule and they stick a little needle in there, do a fine needle aspiration and they take out cells. I'm the person who's literally looking at these like millions of cells under the microscope and I'm like, okay, normal, not normal, this, that. But the patterns that I'm seeing is like, why are some people developing diseases and others not? Like what's all this connection in this? And that how does disease actually progress? So when I'm thinking of it, I'm not just looking at the slide and going, okay, here's the diagnosis. I'm thinking about what is this person's story?
Mm,
What is this person's like tissue telling me about the life that they've lived?
I
Right?
have goosebumps. Yeah.
Yeah. And
Mm.
would they have changed the way they lived their life if they knew that every single thing they did was communication to these 37 trillion cells in the body? And now, I always like to pull up like my cell model. We have like 37 trillion of these guys. No, humans, they are not this big. Okay, they are microscopic. Okay, so microscopic that I need like a 40x or a 100x to look at them under the microscope. But what's really happening is that there's these subtle changes from the size of the nucleus which holds our DNA, to the functionality of our mitochondria, which generally produce energy for our cells, but as we age or get exposures to different lifestyle factors, become dysfunctional and contribute to diseases of aging. There's all these things going on, and we ignore all of them because we don't think of our body in like these trillions of cells that make us up. And so we don't know how to take care of them.
Mm.
So that's where I said, all right, well, if no other pathologist is going to get out of their office, because I will tell you, being a pathologist is a great job. It's different every day. We're solving puzzles. We're solving mysteries of like, what is this diagnosis? But I felt like I learned so much that if I kind of kept this little secret to myself as a pathologist, that there would be a lot of people missing out on how to heal without knowing this. And that's where, I went and verified whether or not my initial thoughts and connections were, correct. I trained in integrative medicine from the Andrew Weil Center for Integrative Medicine. And then I did further training in culinary medicine. How do we really take food and plants and all these things to use them to fuel our cells? And then that's kind of what brings me to, maybe the last decade or so of my life, of where I've been working at this to really educate people in my WELLKULÅ Institute to how does your body work?
Yeah. And so, talk a little bit about, so you're talking about lifestyle and how it affects these, trillions of cells we have, and genetics, because, I look at my own knowledge base and what I've learned over the last 20 years in the health and wellness space. And originally, I had a very serious diagnosis. The feedback is often, well, you have bad genetics. And, I think we've been taught that. We've been given a lot of programming and stories to believe about our health that simply aren't true. And so, people like you that have the data and the structure to be able to tell the accurate story. So talk a little bit about DNA and genetics and the lifestyle, or the epigenetics, and how you saw that under the microscope.
Yeah, yeah, great
And the
question.
importance of it.
Absolutely. So, key thing for people to understand, because this is a conversation I have often, is, oh, my parents had it, I'm gonna have it, or my family member had it, I'm gonna have it. It's in my genes. It's just in my genes. I can't do anything about it. I mean, I can't tell you how many times I've heard this conversation. And for somebody who does the diagnosis and actually tests the genes in the laboratory, I'm like, okay, let's rewind the conversation. And especially when it comes to one of the heaviest diagnoses, which is cancer. Okay. So I have a breast cancer fellowship training, a bone and soft tissue cancer fellowship. So I've seen literally over 100,000 breast cancer cases. And breast cancer is very, very common in women. 1 in 7 or 1 in 8 women will develop it in a lifetime. So when we're having this conversation, I want people to know that 90 to 95% of cancers is not genetics. Let me repeat that. 90 to 95% of cancers is not genetics. And then the question will be, well, then why are they checking my genetics? No, what they are checking is the mutations that you have developed over time so they can give you a targeted medication for them. Because that's how, as scientists, we go, all right, this is what's happening. Let's target that and stop that pathway, right? That does not mean that it's a genetics cancer, right? So, and we have power over these mutations, and that power lies in our lifestyle.
Yes. So what are some things that affect those, the genetics? Because, we were just talking beforehand. When I got my cancer diagnosis, I'm like, wait a minute, I exercise every day, I eat healthy. I had two of the pillars that I would consider part of that lifestyle impact.
Mhm.
Um, so what goes wrong? What else is in the mix that is impacting our cellular health?
Yeah, absolutely. So let's just call this the hashtag CellCare Revolution. In my book, I talk about hashtag CellCare. So most people are familiar with self-care and how to take care of themselves. I want you to elevate that and think of things of how can I take care of myself? So cell-care, right? And this is where conventional medicine doesn't tell you. Like it doesn't tell you that every single cell in your body, right? Remember these guys? Every single
Yeah.
cell in your body, it's constantly listening to the signals you send it. So it's listening to the thoughts that you send it. It's listening to the breath that you take. It's listening to your food choices. It's listening to even the places you go travel. It's listening to the people that you communicate with. It's basically listening to everything. And so when we think of cell care, we think about how are we having our outer world communicate with our inner world, which is our cells, right?
Mhm.
And one of the key aspects that I have found over this time that influences that is our gut health. And, in Ayurveda, we believe that, all disease starts in the gut, so we can be healed from the gut. And everybody has kind of a different mechanism of how they do that because everybody's biology is different. But modern science is now catching up to this and seeing that, oh, the microbiome, which actually has even more organisms in our body than our cells, is
Mhm.
going to influence each and every disease that somebody will experience over a lifetime. So I always tell people, let's start with the gut. If we can optimize your gut health, and I know, like you said, like, oh, you were eating all the right things, but I begin to question you might have been eating the right things, but were you slowing down enough to take the nutrients from the food you were eating, allowing it to break down so then those nutrients would become vitamins, neurotransmitters, hormones, and all that stuff?
Absolutely not. No, I mean, I was eating at my desk if I was lucky, and I was in the race to go get it and eat quickly before the next meeting. And yeah, no connection to the food at all, even though I was eating organic and eating some really great things. And I didn't have a lot of diversity. And I have a feeling that has something to do with it too, because we need diversity in our microbiome.
Yes, yes. So I do stool testing, gut testing on individuals in my clinic, and even before we get to the testing, I do an entire nutrition call with them, and I have them fill out a food diary, and I'm like, let's see what you're eating, right? And they become very aware that they eat basically the same thing for breakfast, lunch, and dinner over the week, and that then we sit down and we go, all right, well, let's look at how many different plants you're eating. Okay, so ideally, we want to get 30 plants in a week to have that biodiversity because our gut microbiome loves biodiversity. Most people are getting two, maybe three, maybe four and a lucky, right?
Maybe. Yeah.
Maybe. Because we think, oh, spinach is good for me. Let me just eat spinach every day. Or avocados are good for me. Let me just eat avocados every day. And so what we find is that biodiversity decreases and that influences the gut bacteria that is there. And we need a certain commensal or natural gut microbiome to do all the things in the body. So when I do test their microbiomes, I'm like, wow, you're have no detectable levels of half of this stuff. And I'm like, when was the last time you ate this kind of food? They're like, never. And I'm like, oh my God, you've taken an entire food category out. Like
Out.
lentils and beans, very common. People just take them out because they're like, well, they bloat me. And I'm like, well, yeah, but let's introduce some smaller so you can actually have the microbiome that can help break them down. The reason they bloat you is because you don't have the right gut bacteria in there to break them down. So there's ways to kind of repair the microbiome. So we don't say, all right, you go from your current diet to like all of a
Something
sudden you're
brand
eating
new.
all this because yeah, you won't feel good. And then you'll be
Yeah.
mad at me because you don't feel good. And that's not the way we do it, right? We have to
Right.
transition. So for those people who are very much a like 0 to 180, no, it's a slow process. Um, so
So,
I,
so how do you work with people? Because there's the mindset because of the allopathic world of I have a headache, I take a pill, it's gone in 20 minutes. So we also are very attached to instant gratification. I want to fix things now. So how do you manage that process with your patients? Because I think that's a big, huge mindset hurdle to shift.
yeah, yeah, it is. And I think it comes from a place of like when I get a patient who, like say something like right now, like weight loss, right? Like, oh, I want to lose 30 pounds. I'm like, okay, uh, let's talk about it. What's your feel good body weight? Oh, I feel good at 140 pounds. I'm like, okay. When was the last time you were at 140 pounds? First year of college. And I'm like, okay, so you actually, like, let's just think the body cannot like lose, like, if you're at 225 now and you want to get back to 140, the body will not in a good way lose that weight like in 6 months or a year. And I know there's a number of people who are on medications to lose the weight, and we are seeing all the long-term side effects come from these medications. So think about like if you're trying to reverse or prevent diseases, it's really about peeling back all these layers of why are you doing the things that you do, and do they make sense for you in this stage of life. And I like to tell people to think of their lives more intentionally, like come from a place of we have a very short amount of time on this planet, that let's just wake up every day and go, what does my body need today? What does my mind need today? What does my soul need today? Instead of competing with all the external factors that exist, and these external things that in the long term don't bring gratification. So coming back to your question, how do I address it? We really kind of have an open, honest conversation about what is it that you want, out of your life? Like what's going to make you happy? Because if you want a quick fix, I'm definitely not your doctor.
So what else besides the microbiome? So that's a really like foundational piece. What else do you look at in helping to fix the cellular imbalances or dysfunction?
Yeah. So another thing that we look at is inflammation. And inflammation from a perspective of it being basically a silent accelerator for aging and chronic disease. And the type of inflammation I like to look at is that, imagine your cells every day we are being exposed to the air we breathe, the pesticides in our food, the toxins, the food additives, all this kind of stuff. And our cells fight back because they're like, oh, how am I going to survive? And they create something we call reactive oxygen species or free radicals. But that's how they're fighting back. But these free radicals go and they damage more of these cells. So when these cells are damaged, they can't function. And how do we fight that? With antioxidants. What's another thing I test in people is their level of vitamins, minerals, antioxidants. And most people are so depleted that they're missing these ingredients. So if you think about it, like chronic inflammation can accelerate your age by 2 to 3 years. So that means a 50-year-old person who has inflammation all the time can actually have the age of a 65-year-old person. But the key part is that it's totally reversible. I don't know, Jen, if you've ever done your aging test. Have you done your aging test yet?
I
Yeah.
have.
Yeah. Yeah. I did mine at the beginning of this year, and I'm like, I want to repeat it to see, but I don't think I've been as good as I was this year. So, but my biologic age or my cellular age is 11 years younger than my chronologic. And that's
Yeah.
because of the lifestyle,
Yeah.
so whether that's the food I eat, the way I manage my mind, the sleep optimization I do, to the movement, all of that. So it's not one thing when it comes to repairing our cells.
Yeah, and I think we're a nation, another big piece is we're so disconnected from nature. I found myself sitting under fluorescent lights at a desk, for 10, 12 hours a day. And the only time I got up was to either grab food or I'd skip food and run to the bathroom because I'd been holding it for hours on end. Right.
Yeah,
And I know I'm not alone. I
yeah,
see a lot of people, especially when they're working for a corporation, that's kind of the go-to, is just maximize your time in the office, and then you come home and you take care of your family or whatever, and then you're back sitting down on your laptop at night. And this was my lifestyle for 29 years.
Yeah, and this is a cultural thing that we work so hard, and I love that you brought up nature because I definitely think like healing goes beyond a doctor's office. Like I don't want people to rely on your doctor's appointment and like, oh, you get your medication, now all of a sudden you're going to be healed, right? We do know that being in nature can change your epigenetics, can change the way your body responds. In fact, there was a study done in, I believe it was in Japan, where they found that people who spent time in nature, being in like the forest, like it's called forest bathing, or Shinraku, like that they could actually increase their natural killer cells by I think enough for like the next 30 days. Like if they just spent about 15 minutes in nature, and like you said, we're under fluorescent lights, we're doing the complete opposite of that. So I definitely recommend people to get out in nature and even if you don't need to go to an exotic location, although I favor exotic locations, but you can even go to a park, right? And go for a walk and like hug a tree. I mean, it's good for you because what you're doing is the more natural killer cells, which is a subtype of cell that we have in the body, that can actually help you prevent getting colds and flus and all this kind of stuff that people, as like we see people getting sick every season.
Right.
Um, so I definitely think that nature plays a key part in how we repair our cellular health.
And what else? Name a couple more that you focus on, and then I want to talk about your book.
Okay, all right. A couple more that we focus on is circadian rhythm. That's another one. And why I feel that is important is because once it goes along with nature as well, right? We want to rise with the sun and we want to go to bed when it's like dark. But I'm seeing individuals that I'm talking to and they're like, oh, I stay up till 1 o'clock at night and then I'm getting up at 11 o'clock. And I'm like, well, you're missing half the day. And that circadian rhythm actually disrupts your gut microbiome, which
Okay.
it then
Wait,
circulates.
that's the first time I've heard that. That is an amazing connection. So can you repeat that?
Yes. Your circadian rhythm disrupts your gut microbiome. So if your gut microbiome is one of the keys to healing, you also need to fix your circadian rhythm. So for the people who are doing like late nighters and staying up late working, or even for individuals who might go to bed at a decent time, but before they went to bed, they're looking at blue light and their biology inside isn't making the correct hormones. Like it's not making melatonin at night. It's still making cortisol because it's getting all this like electrical signals. That's going to influence how the body repairs at night. And I think that that is also key that I see often is we live in a society where it's a very much go, go, go autopilot. And then like I just can't even get the reasoning behind this anymore. Like, oh, let's work until we hit retirement. And then after you go from retirement, so instead of going to your office, you're spending all your time at doctor's appointments. That's what I'm seeing. And that's not
Or not
necessary.
making it, or not being
Or not
here.
making it. Yeah.
Yeah, that happens a lot. That happened to my father. He retired in his early 60s, and he passed away at 63.
Mm.
So he died very young. And I think that's common, is so much, we could unpack this for weeks of a conversation, but so much of individuals' identities are tied to their jobs, right? And they have unhealed trauma. I'm sure trauma is another big piece, right, of the puzzle.
That is a huge piece. I am glad you brought that up because that was another interesting thing that I was seeing with the cases that I was diagnosing in the hospital. Because I'm always so curious. I'm like, what's this person's story? Like, I can see their diagnosis, but like, let's see all the other stuff. And, sitting in tumor board rooms, the room is generally the pathologist that presents like the actual diagnosis, the radiologist that presents the imaging for the case, the the surgeon who's going to cut out the bigger tissue. Then we have the oncologist who's going to prescribe the NCCN guideline medications. And then we have now the radiation oncologist in the last like 2 decades or so. So in that space, the human is not there, like the person, the story, what's going on with this person. Instead, we're like, okay, I'm gonna cut this out, or I cut this out, and now we need to go back because there's this many margin, this positive margin, but no, we can't go back. So why don't you radiate? Like these conversations that I was seeing, and I'm like, wait a minute, let's see the person's story. Let's see if we really want to help them. Yes, maybe they need surgery. Yes, maybe they need the chemo. That's fine. But how do we help them not get this back? What was going on before this situation of the developing this? And that's where the immune system comes in, and that's where that trauma comes in. Because what I was finding is that 90 to 95% of people that were diagnosed with cancer, and this is even now in my clinic, I talk to them, I'm like, so tell me, what was going on in life last year? What did it look like?
Right.
And there's always something big and traumatic. And it doesn't need to be big and traumatic, but it's enough that it was emotionally overwhelming that they didn't have the tools to manage it.
Right.
Because
And then
everybody's
stored in
trauma
the
is
cell,
different.
right? Then it gets stored in the cells and in the tissues.
It absolutely does. And this is one of the things that honestly, because I know this, freaks me out, because I did have my own personal trauma like 4.5 years, almost 5 years ago now. And I'm like, damn it, now I'm going to develop Alzheimer's, I'm going to develop cancer, I'm going to develop this. And I'm like, all right, I got to make sure I stop this in the works, because it
Yeah.
was an extremely traumatic event that I'm still healing over. But I remind myself that I have to like heal from that. Otherwise, I know that cellular cascade that happens.
Right. So where is the line? You said something earlier about people taking responsibility for their health, and also the doctor part. Where is that line for people from your perspective of where you lean into your doctor as an educator to help guide you, and where should individuals be taking responsibility for their health on their own? Because we just talked about simple things like getting outside in nature,
Mhm.
right? Diversifying the food that you're eating. So help unpack that a little bit for people.
I think they go in parallel and it's not like this or that. You need both, right? So
Yep.
first thing is, whatever doctor you pick, really have a conversation with them so they understand where you're coming from. And I don't want people to blindly be like, oh, okay, my doctor told me to go do that. Like, I want you to question it. I really want you to question it and be like, okay, is there something else I can do? Before you put me on a statin, can you give me 6 months to do something else? And what would that something else be? Right?
Mm-hmm.
And if they don't know what that something else would be, ask them, can you send me to somebody who might know what it'll be? Right? Because, doctors, we don't like to say we don't know anything, right? So, um, but so so I would always ask, what is it that you can do before you are on medication for a lifetime? First of all,
Yep.
right? Because it is very easy in our 10-minute appointments to just give you a medication. And for the people who want it, like they want that quick fix, you're not going to be able to change them. You're not going to be able to change them. I mean, I know a current person is not a patient, but is a my friend's husband, and he just had heart surgery. Okay. And he had like 2 stents put in him, and he's young. He's only like 60. And I know the lifestyle he lives. He lives the lifestyle on the road. He's always eating like steak and barbecue and alcohol, like literally, like if not every day, definitely like quite a few times. So I know the lifestyle he's living. And so she was asking me, she's like, what can he do after now that he's had his surgery? And I'm like, well, what did his surgeon say? And she's like, he didn't say anything. He's got to be on these medications now and whatnot. And I'm like, okay, well, here's some lifestyle recommendations. And she's like, yeah, he's not going to do that. And I'm like, well,
And
that
that's
is
a
what the
choice.
guidance is, right? So that's his choice if he doesn't want to do that and he doesn't want to see his daughter get married and, have grandkids and all that kind of stuff. So that I think that's an individual's choice. But for the people who do want to take some control over their health, um, definitely look at your lifestyle. And I think one of the most important things to look at is your first 30 to 60 minutes of your day. Right. So when you wake up in the day, like, are you right on your cell phone? Are you creating that stress response right away as soon as you wake up? Or are you doing something for yourself? Like I call them rituals, right? So what's your morning ritual? What's your practice to really put your body in a state where it's able to heal and receive versus a state that's just like literally on fire?
Right. Morning, morning, morning.
Yeah.
Yeah. Amazing. So as we wrap up here, your book was one of my favorite books, The Anatomy of Wellbeing. So
Oh,
what
thank you.
inspired you? Yeah, show your book. One of the best books ever, packed full of amazing information.
Well, I don't just have this book, I have this one.
Oh, yay! We
Yay!
both have a love affair of plants for
Yes,
sure.
we do. We both love our plants.
So tell me what inspired you to write the book and what is your favorite thing? Because your book, like I said, it should be on the New York Times bestseller forever and ever and ever.
Thank you. Thank you. What inspired me to write this book was, I really wanted people to understand how their body worked and how they can take these simple rituals and practices so health doesn't have to feel like another job.
Yeah.
I wanted to put them through their medical school on their body in like a book. And it was funny because my editor told me, stop writing. Stop writing. You got 95,000 words in here. Just stop writing. You can write another book. And I'm like, no, that would be me giving them like basically leading them to water and then just not giving them like the tools, right? So this book literally is the book you read before other health books. So you can understand why you would want to make these decisions and why you would want to use these other tools. So, yeah, and I really wrote it for the person who feels overwhelmed and confused with all the misinformation out there and how can we simplify it. And I feel like from what I've been told, like this book is so easy to read. And I mean, I've had people like send me pictures like my husband highlighted in this color and then I went back and highlighted in this color for me. And they put these things into practice and they're like, yeah, it's that simple. And I think we overcomplicate health because there's so much information out there. And I really wanted people to have that foundation of how to repair their body and their cells.
Well, two things that you said that I think are brilliant and worth calling forward is one is, we often wait till we get sick before we decide to change. Hello, I was one of those people. And you don't have to. And when you do, it does feel like another thing on the to-do list. And that was a big piece of something I had to overcome is I had to literally step away from my life so that it didn't become another thing on my check the box, right? And I actually started forming a relationship to my healing process versus outsourcing it. So I think that's so important to know that it's not just another thing, that you incorporate it. And then the other big piece, which I love, is the word ritual.
Mm-hmm.
Is then it becomes part of who you are, part of how you're feeding your cells, your soul, every aspect of you, and it's not something separate from you.
Yeah. And if you allow me a minute to explain why I use rituals. So many people live in this space of habits and routines. And for me, a habit is, it's a cue. You come down the stairs, you see the coffee maker, you're like, oh, I need to have my coffee. Or you go into work and somebody brought in pastries. Oh, I need to have this, right? So it is done with very little self-awareness and very little intentionality for your life. Then we move on to, the X and Y axis to routines. So think of routines like, oh, I brush my teeth because I know it's good for me, or I go to the gym because I know it's good for me, or I do this stuff. But you kind of stop doing some of these things. Like you're not flossing every day because it's like, you don't have that connection with it, or the gym routine. Forget about it. People just, change like because it's a forced kind of thing.
Right.
as opposed to where I see rituals have the highest degree of self-awareness, the highest degree of intentionality. So when you wake up in the morning, you're going, like I said earlier, what does my mind need today? What does my body need today? What does my soul need today? And you're living from that place. And the best part is if you don't do something, you don't feel bad about it. Whereas, with routines, if we miss the gym, we're like just angry at ourselves because we did something wrong. So rituals are really meant to be flexible. They're meant to be placed in times and different things, so they just make you feel good. And my book
Yeah.
has, so many rituals in it based off of what you might want to be focused on, whether that's sleep or nutrition or all that kind of stuff. Some just easy things that don't feel like another to-do list.
Yeah, I love that. And I think it's so true. And I teach this when I work with the plants that, protocols often allow people to be unconscious, right? We lose that connection. And if you have a relationship with a plant, or you have a relationship with yourself, or if you have a relationship with a ritual, then it's feeding you, it's not depleting you.
Yeah,
And, I just think that like that self-awareness is such an important part of the healing journey too, and for thriving. So,
absolutely.
oh my gosh, I could talk to you for like the next 5 weeks and not take a breath. You are so insightful and just incredible. So thank you so much for joining me here. And we will share in the notes how folks can find you. Will you just say your website real?
Yeah, absolutely. So my website is drbhanote.com. And all my social media handles, YouTube, Pinterest, Instagram, Facebook, are all at Dr. Bhanote. So really easy to find me. And my book is available at all book retailers, and it is now, after a long awaited time, available on audiobook.
Ah, yay. All right. All right. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you, Jen.